Good morning, everyone. I once met a Reform rabbi who, when I introduced myself, I told him I'm an Orthodox rabbi. He said, "Do you know the difference between Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox?" I said, "No, what's the difference?" He said, "Lazy, hazy, and crazy." Unfortunately, today, in the last 2 centuries, the Jewish people have splintered into different groups, different branches of Judaism, and there are many more today. And why do I say it's unfortunate? Because it only divides us, and we know that we're such a small nation, we need to be united as one. In this week's Torah portion, we have a commandment given to Moshe Rabbeinu to make 2 silver trumpets. And the Torah says these trumpets shall be fashioned out of silver, and it says Lemikra ha'eda, to call the congregation, Olamasa et hamachnas, and to cause the camp to travel. So Rabbi Soloveitchik asks, what's the difference between a congregation and a camp? It says that the point of these silver trumpets were used by Moshe Rabbeinu to call the congregation together and to let the camp know when to travel. What's the difference between a congregation and a camp? So he says something very beautiful and very profound. He says there are 2 things that make us Jewish, and all you have to do is go back to the story of the beginning of Judaism. When God told Abraham, "Go to the land that I will show you," he was being directed by an inner voice to pursue a destiny, a purpose, a mission in this world. What happened when we went out of Egypt? There we were persecuted and we were bonded as a nation, forged together through the persecution of our experience in Egypt. What is the difference? Sometimes we are being proactive and sometimes we're being reactive. Sometimes we find our Jewish identity because others are oppressing us. Anti-Semitism causes us to realize we're all one nation and we're all Jewish and we all have to band together and support each other, and we become connected to each other because we become a camp. A camp, he says, is a defensive group of people who are protecting themselves in their camp from outside forces. But then there's a congregation. A congregation in the Hebrew word is the edah, from the word witness, testimony. This is a group of people who are not forged together by a common enemy or by an external threat, but by an internal vision and purpose in this world. God came to us on Mount Sinai and said we have a mission statement. We have what he calls a faith. A faith. Faith is what your lot, what occurs to you. That's being reactive. Faith is your proactive vision and purpose and perspective in life. So that's the question. Are we Jewish because of external forces? Anti-Semitism is what makes us feel Jewish and stand up and say, I'm a Jew, which is important because we have to unite as one against our common enemies. But when those enemies go away, do we divide and separate from one another, or do we remain a nation even when there's no enemy because we have a common faith, which means we're a congregation with a shared vision? And that is what he says is the difference between nations and religions. Nations are bound together by common experiences and threats. That's what makes us a nation. Religions are sharing a vision and a purpose and a destiny in this world. Judaism is both a nation and a religion. We've experienced a common faith as Jews throughout the millenniums, but we also must have a shared vision and purpose and perspective as a religion. And that's why when we hear about anti-Semitism and we hear about all the challenges today, we have to remember that our Jewishness cannot be solely based on the fact that we're fighting anti-Semitism. We have to have a shared faith. And the more shared that faith, the better and the stronger we are. When we become subdivided into different groups, then unfortunately we don't have a shared vision and perspective, and as a result we become splintered and divided. As I mentioned when I was at AIPAC, David Friedman, the ambassador to Israel, just that day there were rockets flying from Hamas territory into Israel, and he made the point of saying that when those enemies shot those rockets, they weren't saying we're trying to target Orthodox Jews or conservative Jews or Reform Jews. They were targeting Jews, period. And that's what our enemies have done throughout history. The Nazis didn't care if you were Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. And therefore we have to realize that we are all one nation, and therefore our common faith has to be common and united and one, and not allow these divisions to divide us. These are just labels. Labels are good for clothing. But for people, we have to have one peoplehood, as we've always had up until the last few centuries. And we have to realize that, as Moshe says in this week's Parsha, you should be summoned by the clarion call of these trumpets, realizing, yes, you're a camp, a defensive, reactive people to the experiences you share, but more importantly, the inner call, the clarion call given at Mount Sinai for every Jew to share a common faith, purpose, mission, destiny in this world.